The pain radiating from my shattered knee was blinding, but it was nothing compared to the coldness filling my living room. I am Mallory, 19 years old, standing with a trembling hand holding the medical copay forms for my emergency surgery. My father barely glanced at the papers before pushing them away. "Save the money for your brother. His future matters more," he said flatly while cutting off my access to our family medical savings. My mother stepped forward and ripped the hospital authorization forms into pieces right in front of my face. They were choosing cash over my ability to walk. 2 months later, on Christmas Eve, my late grandfather's lawyer called. My father answered the phone expecting a massive payout, but his face suddenly went pale as he stammered, "What do you mean, my son?" If you want to see how a shredded surgery form led to the ultimate destruction of their perfect lives, hit that subscribe button and let me tell you my story. My father Gregory and my mother Janet always had a clear favorite. Everything revolved around protecting my brother Logan. Logan had just driven drunk and crashed into a luxury dealership. He was facing a civil lawsuit worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Instead of holding him accountable, my parents hoarded every penny for an out-of-court settlement to keep him out of prison. One surgery isn't worth ruining all of our lives. Logan smirked from the doorway while watching my papers fall. Looking at those torn pieces, I suddenly remembered my grandfather Vernon. He was gone now, but his protection didn't end with his death. At 4 a.m. the next day, darkness still covered the house as I dragged my painful steps toward the front door with a small backpack. Every movement sent sharp spikes of agony through my damaged knee, forcing me to lean heavily against the hallway wall. The freezing Sedona air hit my face as I finally managed to push the front door open. I pulled out my phone and dialed the only person I could trust. My best friend Sarah answered immediately despite the hour and did not ask unnecessary questions. 20 minutes later, her car pulled up to the curb and she carefully helped me into the passenger seat before driving me straight to the local hospital. The emergency room was relatively quiet when we arrived. My doctor, Dr. Weaver, walked into the examination cubicle holding a tablet. His usual professional demeanor was replaced by a rigid expression of pure shock. He looked directly at me while gripping the edges of his device tightly. "Your parents just revoked your primary medical coverage and completely canceled the financial authorization for this operation," Dr. Weaver stated, his voice laced with heavy anger. I have never seen a family intentionally withdraw funding hours before a necessary joint reconstruction. I looked down at my swollen leg, feeling a hollow emptiness replacing my fear. I needed this procedure to ever walk correctly again, and my parents knew that. Dr. Weaver did not let the situation stall, immediately pulling up a new set of digital documents on his screen. "We are bypassing them entirely," he told me firmly. "I am enrolling you in the Arizona State Emergency Medical Payment Plan. You will take on this debt independently, but the surgery will happen right now." I took the electronic pen and signed my name on the dotted line. By signing that deferred payment contract, I officially severed my financial reliance on Gregory and Janet. The nurses prepped me for the operating room shortly after. When I finally opened my eyes again, the harsh fluorescent lights of the recovery room greeted me. The anesthesia was slowly wearing off, leaving a dull, throbbing sensation in my bandaged leg. The room was completely silent, and I was entirely alone. Staring at the blank ceiling, a sudden memory of my late grandfather surfaced in my mind. Right before he passed away, Vernon had held my hand and whispered a specific phrase, "I made arrangements." At the time, I did not understand what he meant. Now lying in a sterile hospital bed, those words sparked a faint sense of hope regarding his secret protection. I reached for the personal belongings tray next to my bed and grabbed my phone. I unlocked the screen, fully expecting to see at least one missed call or a brief text message from my parents asking if I survived the anesthesia. There was absolutely nothing, leaving my inbox completely empty. Gregory and Janet had truly erased me from their priorities. Instead of waiting for a message that would never come, I opened the local news application. I searched the county police blotter and found exactly what I was looking for. An article detailed a severe drunk driving incident from a few nights prior. Logan had driven his truck straight through the glass storefront of a high-end luxury vehicle dealership, destroying several expensive cars in the process. The report indicated that the business owners were demanding a massive out-of-court financial settlement to drop the most severe property damage charges. I locked my phone and placed it back on the tray. My family was draining their entire livelihood to keep Logan out of a prison cell. They had thrown me away to protect a criminal, but I had successfully secured my own survival. 3 weeks had passed since the day of my hospital discharge, when a security-stamped envelope from a prominent downtown law firm was unexpectedly delivered to my small rented apartment. I navigated the icy sidewalks using my crutches and took a cab straight to the financial district. A polite receptionist escorted me into a quiet, glass-walled conference room overlooking the bustling city below. A few minutes later, a tall man in a tailored suit entered holding a thick leather binder. He introduced himself formally. My lawyer, Mr. Glenn, possessed a calm but serious demeanor that immediately commanded respect. He placed the heavy binder on the polished mahogany table and opened it to reveal pages of complex legal terminology. He explained that the binder contained the details of a multi-million-dollar trust fund. Vernon had established this account many years ago with highly specific instructions. The assets were designated exclusively for my healthcare education and future financial independence. The sheer volume of the wealth was staggering, but Mr. Glenn quickly shifted the conversation to a much darker topic. He pulled out a separate folder containing a few freshly printed forms and slid them across the table for my inspection. I looked down and recognized a medical power of attorney document bearing a signature that looked remarkably similar to my own. Mr. Glenn revealed the disgusting truth. Gregory and Janet had secretly submitted this forged document to the bank just days after my surgery. They claimed I was medically incapacitated and demanded immediate emergency access to siphon the entire trust balance. Their motive was entirely obvious to me. They desperately needed that massive amount of cash to pay off the luxury dealership and secure Logan's freedom before his civil lawsuit deadline. Your parents submitted an emergency power of attorney, but they didn't know about this special security clause. Mr. Glenn explained, pointing his pen at a bolded paragraph near the bottom of the original trust agreement. He detailed how my grandfather had anticipated their financial greed. Vernon had brilliantly installed a strict anti-family clause into the foundation of the trust. This legal barrier required the managing bank to verify any large withdrawal requests directly with me in person or through an authorized fiduciary regardless of any emergency paperwork presented by my relatives. The system had automatically flagged their forged submission as highly suspicious, completely blocking their attempt to drain my inheritance. They dared to forge my signature to get money to save him. I asked, feeling a cold chill run down my spine as I realized the true extent of their crimes. Exactly, and I need you to sign this permanent freeze order right now, he replied, pushing a new legal document toward me along with a heavy metal pen. I took the pen without a single ounce of hesitation. I pressed the tip against the paper and signed my actual name, permanently locking Gregory and Janet out of the account. The reality of the situation fully settled in my mind. The people who raised me were completely willing to commit federal wire fraud and identity theft. They had intentionally pushed me into massive medical debt and tried to steal my hidden safety net, all to keep Logan out of a prison cell. Mr. Glenn collected the signed freeze order and placed it securely into his briefcase. He assured me that the bank's fraud division was already monitoring the situation closely. He also confirmed that the funds would now be used to immediately clear the medical debt I incurred for my knee reconstruction. I walked out of that downtown office feeling a profound sense of power. The financial weapon they desperately needed to save their favorite child was now entirely under my control. By mid-December, the final deadline to submit the financial compensation for Logan's out-of-court civil settlement was only a few days away. Completely unaware that their forged power of attorney had already been exposed and neutralized by the bank, Gregory operated under the absolute delusion that the institution was simply processing the required paperwork. He firmly believed the massive payout would be dispersed directly into his personal account right before the end of the year. Desperate to buy a little more time from the opposing legal team, he recklessly used my inheritance as a verbal collateral promise. He met with the plaintiff's attorneys in person and confidently assured them that a multi-million-dollar trust fund was currently clearing its final administrative hurdles. He promised on paper that their client's damaged luxury dealership would be fully compensated very soon, securing a brief extension for the final payment. Backed into a tight financial corner by the newly signed commitment, Gregory took an incredibly dangerous gamble to handle the short-term expenses. He visited a private financial firm in Sedona and signed a high-interest hard money loan using the family house as physical collateral. He needed immediate cash to pay the upfront retainer for Logan's high-profile defense attorneys and to cover the mounting court fees. Gregory and Janet gladly accepted the extortionate interest rates attached to the loan, completely convinced that the incoming trust fund money would easily wipe out this temporary debt. They were spending aggressively on legal services and acting like lottery winners before the winning ticket was even verified by the authorities. I found out about their arrogant behavior later that week through a brief phone call. Sarah had run into Janet at a local grocery store and noticed her boasting about hiring the most expensive legal defense team in the county. Sarah immediately called me to report the strange encounter. "You need to be careful. They are spending and talking like that money already belongs to them." Sarah warned over the phone, her voice tight with genuine concern regarding my safety. "Just let them keep dreaming. They have absolutely no idea about the deadly trap that has already been set for them," I replied calmly to my friend. That same afternoon, I received a scheduled update call from Mr. Glenn. My lawyer had been closely monitoring the civil docket regarding the dealership crash. He utilized his professional network to acquire a copy of the official documents filed by the opposing counsel. The stakes for my family had just increased significantly due to their own reckless actions. Gregory has officially signed the compensation commitment papers. If the funds are not produced by the exact deadline, the settlement will be voided and Logan will definitely go to prison. Mr. Glenn stated with absolute professional certainty. The legal net was now perfectly woven. Mr. Glenn and I had meticulously finalized every defensive barrier around Vernon's assets. We did not need to launch a direct attack against my family or confront them about the forgery. Their own blinding greed and arrogant assumptions were doing all the heavy lifting. I knew exactly how the banking protocol worked now because Mr. Glenn had explained the security triggers. The bank's fraud division had placed a silent alert on the account following the rejected forgery attempt. All it would take was one more attempt from Gregory to access the money. If he picked up the phone to demand a status update on his fraudulent withdrawal request, the bank's security system would automatically trigger a federal fraud investigation call. I put my phone down and focused entirely on my physical therapy exercises, quietly waiting for their inevitable collapse. Exactly at 8 o'clock on Christmas Eve, the ringing of the telephone tore through the fake festive atmosphere at my old house. Mr. Glenn later provided me with the precise details of how the trap snapped shut. Gregory rushed to pick up the landline with a triumphant smile across his face. He fully expected the bank to confirm that the massive payout had successfully cleared into his checking account just in time for the holidays. Instead, the voice on the other end belonged to a senior investigator from the bank's internal fraud division. He was initiating a formal security protocol and connected Mr. Glenn to the conference call to represent my legal interests as the sole beneficiary of Vernon's assets. Gregory had immediately put the call on speakerphone so Janet could hear the good news, assuming they were about to be rich. The investigator firmly explained that the emergency power of attorney document submitted earlier that month had been definitively flagged as a fraudulent forgery by their legal department. The financial institution had officially rejected the withdrawal request and permanently locked the account from any external access. The bank representative informed them that tampering with a legally protected trust fund crossed the line into serious financial crimes. The triumphant smile instantly vanished from Gregory's face, replaced by a sickening shade of pale white. "What do you mean, my son?" Gregory stammered, his voice trembling as the devastating reality of the situation began to crush his arrogant assumptions. He desperately tried to argue, claiming there was a misunderstanding and that he needed the funds immediately for a critical legal settlement. Mr. Glenn did not let him finish his pathetic excuses. My lawyer's voice cut through the speakerphone with absolute icy authority. "Your file has been reported for federal fraud. You have no right to touch any of her assets," Mr. Glenn stated firmly, leaving absolutely no room for negotiation or debate. The line went completely dead as the investigator terminated the call. Gregory remained completely silent, standing frozen in the middle of the decorated living room, with the phone still pressed against his ear, as if his brain could not process the rejection. Janet, who was standing nearby holding a glass of wine, immediately recognized the abnormal, paralyzed reaction of her husband. She dropped her glass, shattering it on the hardwood floor, and began to panic. She frantically grabbed Gregory's arm, shaking him and demanding to know what the bank had said about the money they desperately needed. Before Gregory could even form a coherent sentence to explain the disaster, heavy footsteps echoed from the wooden staircase. Logan casually walked down the stairs, completely oblivious to the legal and financial destruction that had just occurred in the living room. "Is the settlement money sorted out, Dad? I don't want to hear bad news tonight," Logan asked with a careless smirk, expecting his parents to hand him his freedom on a silver platter just like they always did. His question hung in the heavy air, met only by the suffocating silence of his terrified parents. The false illusion of their perfect family collapsed entirely in that exact moment. All three of them finally realized that the despicable plan to steal my hidden inheritance was completely crushed. There was no secret payout coming to rescue them from the consequences of their actions. They had zero cash available to pay off the extortionate high-interest loan they had foolishly taken against their own house just a few weeks prior. The out-of-court civil compensation deadline was now impossible to meet, meaning the opposing lawyers would immediately void the agreement and proceed with criminal prosecution. The protective shield they had ruthlessly sacrificed my health to build was completely shattered into pieces, and Logan's future was officially closed forever. On the morning of January 2nd, the county sheriff parked his cruiser directly in front of Gregory's house, initiating an irreversible chain of legal disasters. Because the financial commitment was completely broken, the out-of-court civil settlement collapsed immediately. The opposing legal team wasted no time notifying the presiding judge that the promised multi-million-dollar trust fund was a complete fabrication utilized solely to delay justice. Consequently, the court officially revoked Logan's bail conditions without any further hearings. The sheriff walked heavily up the steps to the front porch, unclipping his heavy metal handcuffs from his belt. Logan opened the door in a panic, looking completely unprepared for the harsh reality waiting on his doorstep. "You have violated the terms of your compensation agreement. Put your hands behind your back immediately," the sheriff ordered coldly, instantly extinguishing any pathetic attempts at resistance from Logan. Logan attempted to argue and step backward into the hallway, but the officer forcefully grabbed his shoulder, turned him around, and secured the cuffs tightly. He was escorted down the driveway toward the specialized transport vehicle. Janet ran out onto the lawn without a coat, screaming and crying as she watched her favorite son get shoved into the back of a police cruiser. The protective bubble they had ruined my life to maintain was finally popping, leaving them exposed to the law. Just a few hours later, before the dust could even settle from the devastating arrest, representatives from the private financial firm arrived at the property. Gregory had absolutely zero cash available to make the first massive payment on his high-interest hard money loan. Without the trust fund money to cover the extortionate rates, he was completely bankrupt. operating strictly by the book. The collection agents presented the legal paperwork. They proceeded to tape a glaring neon foreclosure notice directly onto the front wooden door, initiating the aggressive process of seizing the family house. "You cannot take our home away. We will get the money somehow." Janet screamed in absolute despair while the banking agents systematically taped the eviction warnings to the glass panels. The financial agents completely ignored her hysterical outbursts, continuing their meticulous documentation of the property. Shortly after, a heavy-duty tow truck appeared on the street to repossess their remaining valuable assets. The operators swiftly hooked up Gregory's expensive vehicles, which had also been leveraged as collateral for the defense attorney retainer fees. The financial bleeding did not stop at the property line. Simultaneously, the National Bank managing Vernon's trust fund officially filed a severe civil complaint against Gregory regarding the forged medical power of attorney. This federal action triggered an immediate and total freeze on all of his personal checking and savings accounts, pending a thorough fraud investigation. He could not even buy a tank of gas, let alone hire a competent defense attorney to bail Logan out a second time. "They lost absolutely everything this morning, exactly as you predicted." Mr. Glenn informed me briefly over a scheduled phone call summarizing the brutal morning for the villains of my story. I sat in my quiet apartment listening to the legal updates with a profound sense of closure. Mr. Glenn confirmed that the fraud department was preparing to hand the forgery evidence over to the state prosecutors. I did not feel an ounce of pity for the people losing their house, or for the brother currently sitting in a county jail cell. They had chosen to orchestrate their own downfall the exact moment they decided my physical health was an acceptable sacrifice for their greed. The legal system was simply balancing the scales they had deliberately tipped. In the freezing middle of February, I had to visit the city courthouse to submit the final property ownership confirmation documents, and I accidentally ran into some old acquaintances. I had just finished signing the last set of trust fund releases inside the clerk's office on the second floor. Stepping out of the heavy oak doors into the brightly lit corridor, my eyes scanned the crowded hallway to find the nearest exit elevator. Near the designated waiting area for bankruptcy filings and bad debt resolution, I spotted Gregory and Janet sitting together on a hard wooden bench. The physical transformation they had undergone in just a few short months was genuinely shocking. They looked incredibly haggard, visibly aged, and utterly miserable. The arrogant posture and entitled attitude they once proudly paraded around Sedona were completely gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of two individuals who had lost absolutely everything to their own greed. Their expensive designer clothes were replaced by wrinkled, mismatched layers that looked hastily thrown on. I had zero intention of interacting with them, so I kept my gaze focused forward and continued walking steadily down the marble hallway. My knee reconstruction surgery had been a complete medical success, allowing me to walk firmly and confidently without utilizing crutches or exhibiting any noticeable limp. Unfortunately, the confident, rhythmic sound of my boots against the stone floor caught Janet's attention. She looked up, locked eyes with me, and instantly registered my steady, pain-free gait. Instead of feeling any remorse or shame for abandoning me, she leaped up from the wooden bench and aggressively rushed forward to physically block my path to the elevator bank. She instantly slipped back into her practiced role as the suffering victim, deploying the most ruthless psychological manipulation tactics she possessed in a desperate attempt to force my compliance. "Mallory, please, Logan won't survive in prison. He needs your money." Janet desperately grabbed the sleeve of my winter coat, screaming and crying right in the middle of the busy courthouse corridor for everyone to see. She fully expected me to crumble under the intense public pressure and the dramatic tears of a mother begging for her son. Instead, I felt absolutely nothing but a cold, unwavering sense of finality. I yanked my arm back forcefully, immediately breaking her physical grip on my clothing. I looked directly into her tear-filled eyes, refusing to let her manipulative public display affect my judgment or trigger any false guilt. "You already decided which child mattered." Now deal with the consequences yourself. I replied, my voice as sharp and cold as a knife cutting through the tense air. Gregory stood up from the bench and slowly shuffled over to join his weeping wife. He looked at my face, finally realizing that the obedient, invisible daughter they used to walk all over was permanently gone. "We are family, you can't be this cold-blooded," Gregory interjected weakly, desperately trying to hold on to one last sliver of hope to save his bankrupt existence and his imprisoned son. I stared directly at the man who had blatantly refused to pay for my essential medical care and actively tried to steal my grandfather's hidden financial protection. I did not waste another second engaging with their pathetic delusions or defending my boundaries. Completely unbothered by Gregory's pathetic public humiliation or Janet's continuous wailing echoing off the courthouse walls, I smoothly stepped around their blocking bodies. I confidently walked through the heavy double doors, descended the front concrete steps of the courthouse, and headed straight toward the visitor parking lot. I safely navigated my vehicle out of the busy parking structure, merged onto the main road, and drove away from the building without turning my head to look back at them, even a single time. 8 months after that fateful night, I officially finished my final physical therapy session and began packing my bags for a new city. The transition marked the absolute end of my physical and emotional suffering. My knee has recovered completely, allowing me to jog through the local park every single morning without feeling any residual pain. The joint reconstruction that Gregory and Janet tried to deny me is now fully healed and stronger than ever. Using the legal authority over Vernon's trust fund, I immediately wired the exact amount needed to pay off the state's deferred medical payment plan, clearing my emergency hospital debt entirely. I also submitted the full tuition payment for my university degree in a completely different state. I bought my own car, signed a lease for a secure apartment, and established a solid foundation for my career. I am finally in absolute control of my own destiny, utilizing the financial protection my grandfather specifically designed for my independence. No one can ever hold my health care or my education hostage again. Before I left Arizona, Mr. Glenn provided me with one final legal update regarding my former relatives. Logan is currently serving a long-term sentence in the state penitentiary. Without the massive settlement money to bribe his way out of the consequences, the judge handed down a maximum penalty for his destructive actions. The pampered lifestyle he always enjoyed is permanently replaced by a concrete cell. Gregory and Janet completely lost the foreclosure battle against the private financial firm. The bank seized the house and the collection agencies stripped their remaining bank accounts bare. They are now living in a dilapidated, rundown trailer park on the very edge of the county, far away from the affluent neighborhoods they used to boast about. They spend their days struggling to survive under the crushing weight of a massive, unpayable debt, completely isolated from their former social circles. The high-interest loan they took out to save Logan ultimately destroyed their entire existence. I officially established a permanent, non-negotiable, no-contact boundary with all 3 of them. I changed my phone number, deleted my old email addresses, and legally ensured my new residential location remained strictly confidential through Mr. Glenn's office. I refused to give them another opportunity to manipulate my life or beg for a second chance. The profound peace in my mind and the physical strength in my legs serve as the ultimate proof that my decision was absolutely correct. Some outsiders might view my complete detachment as ruthless, but severing those toxic ties was the only way to protect my future from their insatiable greed. Walking away without looking back saved my life. Filial piety does not mean allowing others to strip away your fundamental right to live and thrive. Leaving a highly toxic family environment is never a selfish act. It is simply the only viable method to survive. Blind parental favoritism acts as a deadly poison, ultimately destroying the future of the exact children they desperately try to protect. Living in the truth and maintaining total independence is the most appropriate and powerful sentence you can hand down to toxic people. Thank you so much for listening to my story until the very final minutes. I truly hope this journey provides immense courage to anyone currently facing a similar toxic situation. Please do not hesitate to leave a comment sharing your own thoughts, perspectives, or personal experiences below. I always appreciate and deeply listen to your voices. See you next time.